Hi, welcome to One Eye on the Page. I'm Scott. I am doing a TBR. I do not usually do these because I usually don't like to pick books that I'm going to read because that means I have to read them. And sometimes I also just go by a mood. But my daughter Robin, a Hobbit's reading list, is doing a Tolkien readathon for the month of September. So I decided to participate. I will link her YouTube page and the specific video in the description. And I just wanted to talk to you about the books that I am picking to read in the month of September. These might not be the only books that I read, but I am definitely going to try to read these. I'm going to try to complete The Path. Now, she made different maps for different characters, both from The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. So you could follow Bilbo in The Hobbit, or Gimli, or Legolas, or any of the hobbits in Lord of the Rings. Let's see what else. Or the dwarves or the wizards in The Hobbit. And you also can follow Aragorn or Boromir from Lord of the Rings. Now, depending on where these characters travel to, that kind of depends on what type of book and how many books you read. For example, and I will try not to give any spoilers for either The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. For example, though, Boromir only has 4 books, whereas the other man in Lord of the Rings, Aragorn, has 13 books. You have 4 books for Boromir being the lowest, and I believe you have 14 books for, I believe, 3 characters being the longest. I decided to go for the Lord of the Rings in the route of Sam and Frodo, but Sam, because Sam is not only my favorite character in the Lord of the Rings, he is one of, if not the favorite characters of mine in all of literature. Robin has given different requirements for each book. And if you want to do this, you can go to her page, and as she says in her video, if you don't find a book that meets the requirement there, you can replace it with a Tolkien book, and you can stretch the rules as much as you want to. This isn't a hard binding thing. It's just something to encourage people to read, give a little togetherness thing for us to go along as a fellowship. For example, like read a book with a troll in it. It can be a troll like in Lord of the Rings, or it could be an internet troll, or however you want to do it. I could pick Stephen King's It because it is based on the troll under the bridge. That's a reach, but it, like I said, not any hard and set rules. I have one book where there's a rule for it, and it's kind of like, well, I went by a search, and the search said this, but it doesn't look like the book says this. I'm still doing it. Search said it. So, Sam, his first stop is, of course, in Bag End. Not his first stop. That's where he's at. That has to be a book that involves a party. So I am picking Jane Austen's Emma. I have not actually read Emma. I have started Emma before, and I have watched Clueless, which is not the same as reading Emma, but Clueless is based on Emma. And of course, pretty much in every Jane Austen book, There Is a Party. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that one on September 1st, which is a bit of a difficult one because older classics I tend to read more slowly than, you know, other books. So hopefully that doesn't get me bogged down in begging, drinking beer, and, well, number two is Buckleberry Ferry. Of course, all the hobbits have experience with Buckleberry Ferry, which you will know from the book and or the movie. So that one is to involve water. I am on Kindle going to be reading one of the complete works of Robert Louis Stevenson. I am going to be reading Treasure Island, another book that I have not read before. I haven't seen a movie. I know the basics of it by osmosis, I guess. But yeah, I have no experience with that. I have very little experience with Robert Louis Stevenson. I have read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I believe that is the only thing that I have read by him. I may have read a short story here or there, but that is the only novel that I have read. Stop number three is Bree. And actually, this is one of the reasons I almost didn't pick Sam, even though everything called out for me to pick Sam. But Robin has, for Bree, pick a book with a horse on the cover. I hate horses. I didn't almost die, but the horse tried. So I hold it against all horses for the actions of one, and that's not fair, but that's, you know, how I feel. So, but I decided to get over my hatred of horses, and I don't know if this, well, the book that I have is now, of course, this cover does not have a horse on it. This is Mark Twain. I'm going to be reading A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. But when I did a search, it gave me this, and I was like, yeah, there's, again, another book I haven't read. It gives me, oh, there's a horse on the cover, so that works for me. If there's not a horse in the novel, and I assume there is, because it would make sense. How else are these knights getting around? So I am going to be reading that. No experience with it before. Another one, Osmosis. I know a lot of the story, but I've never read it. Haven't seen a movie. So I'm gonna kind of be going into it with a little knowledge, but no experience. I do tend to like Mark Twain, but I haven't actually read too much. I've read the basics, of course, Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, Life on the Mississippi. I believe I've definitely read quite a few short stories, but despite there being a lot of Twain, I just have never got around to reading Twain. I think, perhaps unfortunately, we've kind of grown past Twain a little bit. A lot of it just has to do with the times and the language of the times that he lived in. Has kind of made him, for better or worse, persona non grata in a lot of the schools. And I say this as someone who loved Huckleberry Finn. I didn't like Tom Sawyer as much. I thought Tom Sawyer was a putz, the character. But I really liked Huckleberry Finn. But yeah, some of the language is being re-examined. I still think that people should read Huckleberry Finn, but that's my opinion. We'll see how I feel after I read this novel. Uh, Maybe I will be less of a pusher of Mark Twain as someone who hasn't read as much Mark Twain as I perhaps should have. have an English degree too, and I keep telling you, you know, I haven't read this classic. I haven't read that classic either. I don't read classics. I read trashy romance and cozy mysteries, and Don Quixote and Animal Farm. But I have a sore throat, so my voice sounds different, and then my voice sounds different, and occasionally I might cough. I'll try to edit out all the coughing, but I just sound like a wheezing frog, and I should sound like Barry White. So we go from Bree to Weathertop, where we need to read a book, historical fiction book. I picked The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, which I do not have yet. I'm planning on listening to this as an audiobook. I will read you a quick excerpt from, or a quick synopsis from Wikipedia. It's based on the historic Dozier School, a reform school in Florida that operated for 111 years and was revealed as highly abusive. So I think that counts as a historical novel. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a fun read, but I think it should be an interesting read. It has won awards. I'm looking forward to reading it and also not looking forward to reading it. And sometimes that's the best type of book. The next stop is Rivendell. We need to read a book about a meeting. Now, obviously, meeting can have lots of interpretations. Office meeting, two people meeting on a road, whatever your concept of the word meeting is, that's all it has to be. I just looked up books that have a meeting in it. And I got The Dog Stars by Peter Heller. It's about a man who survives a pandemic that killed everyone he knows. He lives in the hangar of a small airport with his dog, and he gets a random transmission through his car radio. And I assume that is the meeting. Meets this other person. So I don't really know anything about this book. It is short, which if it's not good, that's good. But it seems to get praise by, you know, authors that I like or think I like. A lot of these books I picked without a lot of knowledge about them beforehand because I'm crazy like that. So hopefully I don't regret that. It looks like it should be interesting. Perhaps a little, it hits a little too close to home with everybody dying in a pandemic, but we do what we do. The next is Moria, which there we flip a coin to decide between two books. Lothlorien is our next stop, in which we are to read a book about grief. I picked Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. Another book where I did a search, books about grief. And this is one that came up. Oh, soon to be a major motion picture produced by Reese Witherspoon. I assume that's still to come and hasn't happened yet. I've heard nothing about it. Eleanor Oliphant struggles with appropriate social skills and tends to say exactly what she's thinking. Nothing is missing in her carefully timetabled life, where weekends mostly consist of frozen pizza, vodka, and phone chats with Mummy. But everything changes when Eleanor meets Raymond, the bumbling IT guy from her office, whose big heart will ultimately help Eleanor find the way to repair her own profoundly damaged one. I assume the book is better than what the blurb on the back says. Somebody was paid to write that. So this is another one. I was feeling comfortable with this one before I read that blurb. I don't know. This seems like whoever wrote this blurb on the back was like writing a syrupy romance blurb, and that's really not how it came across in the Amazon uh, description. So the next book is from Falls of Roars. Read a book involving a hard decision. I picked Carry On Jeeves by P.G. Woodhouse because Bertie Wooster always has to have hard decisions made, usually by Jeeves. But to me, this counts. The book I have to read for our next podcast that we're doing, which, yeah, that we'll record it probably the 1st of October and it'll be up before the 1st of November. So, yeah, I felt comfortable making that choice. Maybe Birdie's hard decisions aren't what you might think of hard decisions, but Birdie lived a different life than we do. So I'm comfortable with it. So that was actually, those books were for all the hobbits. It's after this where they split up. Frodo and Sam have their own books, then Merry has his own books, and Pippin has his own books. Although, of course, Merry and Pippin share some of the same places. But I'm going with Sam, Emin Mool, and I mispronounce this, sorry. Read a book about a pet. Uh, I had a book picked for this, and then apparently I didn't download it or anything, and I was like, okay. So I picked a different book. I picked Mimi Lee Gets a Clue, which you can see there's a cat on the cover. It's a cozy mystery. I'm assuming that after some of the books that I have to read, that I will be looking forward to a cozy mystery. So I don't know any of the details about it at all. But this is what happens when I do TBRs. I'm just like, sure. It's a little over 300 pages, so I'm comfortable with that. I think I can do that. Um, and if I don't like it, it's my own fault, and I don't have room to complain. Will I complain? Bet your ass I'll complain. I am a hypocrite. Well, then we move on to The Dead Marshes, and it's Read a Book with a Candle on the cover. Now, I picked a book by doing a search. Books with candle on covers. So I did my part, and I found a book. It's actually another mystery. It is Undertaking Irene by Pamela Burford. I apologize if I mispronounce her name. As you could see, there is no candle on this cover. But it takes place, or at least I believe it starts, uh, at a mortuary, at a funeral home. There are probably candles. Google told me there was a candle on the cover, and I bought the book. So there's a candle on the cover. If you kind of look at it like, this, sure. But it's part of a mystery series. It is the first book, which thankfully, because I didn't want to go in there, but apparently the Jane Delaney mysteries, there are at least 8 books in it. So it seems like it may have some popularity, perhaps. I said in my last vlog, which I think will go out before this goes out, that I'm not having a lot of luck with romance novels. I read a great romance novel in a month, and then most of the romance novels after that suck. So yeah, I'm open to trying it with cozy mysteries. At least there's not much of a chance I'll be reading boring descriptions of sex in them, because there's nothing sadder than a boring description of sex. There are many things sadder, but I'm also self-centered, so we go from there to Ithilien, and I probably mispronounced that too. I'm not quite the Tolkien nerd that Robin is. I just love Sam. I love a lot of characters, but I I have read The Hobbit and I've read The Lord of the Rings and I've read them multiple times, but I haven't read all the other books like Robin has. So I need to read a book involving a hostage situation. I did my good old Google search again, and I came up with The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. It's a thriller, which thrillers don't tend to go very well with me, but that's based purely on book club thrillers. Perhaps my family just doesn't pick very good thrillers for the book club. It says it's a psychological thriller, which gives me some hope. I like psychology. Um, I like psychological thrillers. I don't know if this is going to be the right route. I have recently read a book called The Maid's Diary that was very badly written, but it was well plotted. So, a psychological thriller involving maids. I have some hopes. Not the same author, but Lorith something. I'm really going on this fellowship uh, track with Abandon here, just picking books that I know little about. I'm crazy. From there, we go to Minas Morgul, read a book involving a betrayal. The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. I have heard about this book. Apparently, it is a motion picture now about a girl who sees something. Well, her train goes by this couple and she sees them every day, and then she sees something and she goes to police. What happens then? Other than that, I don't know anything. I'm going to this fairly blindly. It's one of those things I've seen in the periphery, but I don't really know much about it. I'm actually kind of excited about going into all these books, not really knowing anything. And maybe. Then I finish up, and this is, I believe, yes, this is the only book that I have read before out of all these books. It's Mount Doom. So Sam and Frodo are at Mount Doom, and Frodo's like, "No, I think I want to keep my ring." You're fine, Frodo. So I need to read the last book in the series. Now, of course, I could have read Return of the King, but one, Return of the King, it is longer and densely packed. And I think at the end of this, I kind of want something a little bit easier reading. And I'm kind of interested in this because this book is the last book in the series that I liked as a teenager. I have read it since. I don't believe that I have read it. I'm going to say at least as long as my youngest has been alive. So it's been over 15 years and probably closer to 20 years since I've read this series. But it's the Belgariad by David Eddings, and so Enchanter's Endgame is the last book in the series. Now, I enjoyed this book when I read it, but over time, And with experience and knowledge and wisdom and just getting older, there are things in the book that I have problems with. Even when I was reading it when I was younger, I have to say Aunt Polgara was so irritating. I think she may be even more so. I don't think that a lot of the characters in this are tropes basically. The women, Polgara and I can't remember the princess Sinadra. I remembered it. Um, they're both like stereotypical sitcom wives, just nag, 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 and they're perfect and smart. Well, the men are dumb and idiotic and stupid. In other words, it means the same thing. And also, and this is probably just going to be a me thing, but David Eddings loved his adverbs like a lot, especially with dialogue attribution. And I kind of go with the wisdom of Stephen King in his book on writing. It's like you can pretty much do most everything with he or she said or he or she asked, and you don't need to clutter it up with adverbs. That's just me. So I'm going to be interested in how I feel about that because yeah, I think it's at least 20 years since I've read any of these books. And I remember enough about them that I feel comfortable just reading book five rather than going through all four previous books. And there's also, afterwards, there's the Bulgarian, I believe, which I don't think is as good a series as the first one. But so that is my trek. That is my little Fellowship of the Ring. 13 books that I have to read in September. I don't think that those will be the only books I read. I will definitely read other books, but I do hope that I will finish all of these books. So we will see how that goes. So once again, this is from Robin at A Hobbit's Reading List. Please check out her video. Take a little trip yourself through Middle Earth. Please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.